no insulin in their blood. Their pancreas does not produce insulin.
Type 1 diabetes, the insulin is not produced.
Correct.
Doctors specializing in type 1 diabetes say they're increasingly concerned.
When the Asians come to the United States, every child is considered underweight. Why? Because the weight table that we learn in medical school is based on white American males and females. It cannot be applied to any other ethnic group. Nobody can predict when you are going to feel hungry next. If you cannot predict yourself, how does your brain know?
Welcome to another edition of the King Obed Podcast. In today's episode, I have with me a distinguished guest who is doing so well and has been doing so much for people in the world of medicine. He is Dr. John Putili, a renowned health expert, and he's written so many books dealing into the space of diabetes and a whole lot, weight management, how to control hunger, and a lot of things. We have Dr. John with me. So, Dr. John, welcome to the King Obed Podcast.
Mr. King Obed, I am happy to be your guest and I thank you for having me.
Great. So, when we say Dr. John Putili, who are you? What is your background?
Yes, I'm glad you asked because I grew up in India. I did my medical training in India. I was in the United Kingdom for 1 year, 1.5 years to do a internship. Then 1970, I came to the United States. I had my residency and fellowship training, practiced in the state of Texas for over 30 years, retired, and I had questions of different medical matters during my practice, which I could not find answers for in medical textbooks. So I started thinking about them, and I came up with my own answers, and I published 7 books. First I had 3 primary questions. May I go on? The first question was, nobody can predict when you are going to feel hungry next. I'm not talking about when you are going to be eating. That is our condition, hungry. If you cannot predict yourself, how does your brain know when to create the sensation of hunger? I could not find an answer in physiology textbooks. The second question was, when you eat, you don't always eat the same volume of food. Sometimes you eat very much less and more, and you feel satisfied. So how does the brain know? This time, for example, if you are thirsty, can you predetermine how much water will it take to quench your thirst?
No, you cannot predict. You just have to continue drinking.
Right. And each time the volume is different. By the time you are quenched, the water is still in your stomach. It has not been absorbed into the body yet. So how did the brain know? This time you only need 3 ounces. Next time you need 12 ounces. Again, there was no answer in medical textbooks. The third question was, 4 hours after you eat, all the nutrients are in the blood. Your blood sugar is high, blood triglyceride is high, cholesterol is high, fatty acid, amino acid. So if you eat supper at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, by 11 o'clock, all the nutrients are high in the blood. But tomorrow morning, everything is back to baseline. So where did they go? So these are the 3 questions I could not find answers. So I came up with the answers and I published my first book called Eat, Chew, Live. And the critical thing is chew. Why did I put that there? Let me ask you a question. Can you think anything in nature that adult humans can eat to get nutrients from without chewing?
I have no clue.
Unless you...
For everything that we get nutrients from, we have to chew before.
Exactly. But how much can you chew rice, pasta, bread? And people are more and more into blending and pureeing. So that is one of the major problems, because when you stop chewing, you swallow. So you're going into the next bite.
Yes.
So that, I think, is the biggest problem in people gaining weight.
Okay, so you think that the reason why people are gaining weight is the fact that people are chewing all the time, or they are swallowing all the time.
They are eating too fast.
People are eating too fast. That is why they are gaining weight.
Exactly. They say taking more than what they should at that time. Why did nature package everything in containers that require chewing, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Suppose I blindfold you and give you something to drink. You will know whether it is water, wine, beer, milk. How do you know?
Unless probably I open it, or maybe I see on the can that this is milk or water.
If I blindfold you, or if you don't know what I give you, how will you know? You will know it in the moment it enters your mouth, you will know what it is, right?
Yes.
Because your taste buds detect it. That the taste buds send a message to the brain, oh, this is water, this is wine, this is beer. What I'm suggesting in my book is those taste buds are not only detecting what is entering in the mouth, but also metering how much is going down. The brain already knows what is your water deficit when you are thirsty. When the intake matches the need, the brain says, okay, this time, this is all you need. Your thirst is quenched. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So
What
it means that the brain connects, it takes sensation, or it connects from the taste buds, and then it tells everything that now you are full or you are empty.
correct. It is not full or empty. Full or empty means it is a container. This is satisfaction. You should be satisfied because this is what we need right now. In the book, what I am suggesting is there is a similar mechanism for nutrients also. Human body needs 100 different nutrients for healthy living. And you cannot get that from one food group or one meal. But as you chew, you are releasing nutrients onto the taste buds and they detect and report to the brain not only what you are eating, but also how much is going down. And the smell receptors pick up all the volatile, fat-soluble spices and things like that.
Okay. So that is how people gain weight, and then people also reduce weight as well. So how can people better control their weight?
Okay. The first thing, if you want proof of this, look at children, 2 toddlers up to 6 years of age. Do you have any children?
No, not yet.
So if you watch them, you will observe 3 things. 1, the children will eat only when they are hungry.
Children will eat
Second,
hungry.
The second, grandma makes so many things, but the child will pick and choose what the child needs.
Yes.
And when the child is satisfied, the child could care less how much is left on the plate. The child would rather go out and play. That means the child decides when to eat, how much to eat, and what to eat. And they grow up normally on their own. So if we all did that at that age, why can't we do it now?
Okay.
Right? Do you know when
like children decide what to pick from maybe a variety of food that they've been served, or the quantity of food that they've been served. We can also, as at now, when you are an adult, you can also decide what amount of food or what quantity of food you need to take or you want to take.
Exactly. Do you know when that starts changing? Because the children are wired by nature how to control the intake and when to take it, but it changes starting about age 6.
Okay.
Do you know why?
No.
Do you know why? Because they start listening to their parents.
Interesting.
The parents tell them, we don't have time to stop on the way. We are going traveling. You have to go to school, eat now. You have to go to sports, eat now. You need to get bigger. You need to become stronger, eat. So that is what happens. Then they go to school, activities. They don't have time. They just gulp it down. They graduate, go to college, or go to veterinary school, but you have things to do. You have homework to do. You have to see the patients, animals. So you eat while you are in between something you are doing. You are not concentrating on the meal. You are concentrating, your mind is someplace. If you are eating and watching TV or a sports, your brain has to make a decision regarding signals coming from your eye or mouth. And brain always selects the eye signals higher than the taste signals. So by the time you half the food is gone before you know I'm eating.
Interesting. So it means that we need to be focused on food that we are taking in at a particular point in time rather than being distracted by other things.
When there is food in your mouth, you have to concentrate on enjoying it. When you are hungry, the first bite of food tastes so good. After about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the intensity of enjoyment has gone down. But we keep eating as an adult because you don't want to waste food. I was one time advising 10 white American obese adults how to lose weight. And I told them, I grew up in India. Certain days I didn't feel hungry. And I didn't know why. Now I know why. So they asked why. Because you were eating for starving children in India and Africa. So they were told, don't waste any food because there are starving children there. So I know now why I didn't feel hungry when I was growing up. Now you can eat, or you don't have to eat. So this is a very common thing that parents do. Oh, there are starving people elsewhere in the world, so finish what is on your plate. So they get into the habit of whatever they put on their plate, they finish.
Interesting. So the advice is that we should be focused on the food we are eating at that point, and we should not be distracted, because when we are distracted, the brain picks signals from the eyes.
We all enjoy eating, but we don't enjoy what we eat.
We all enjoy eating, but we don't enjoy what we eat. What is the cause? Why is it so?
Because we are not concentrating on the signals from the mouth. We are always doing something else while you are eating.
Is it we are watching TV? Is it we are on our phones? Is it we are reading? Is it we are chatting? So we are not so fixated on the food that we are eating.
Exactly. So how can your brain tell you had enough if the brain says you are not listening?
Is that the reason why people eat, but they are still not, putting on the actual amount of weight or the estimated amount of weight that maybe a person's body's mass index, they are supposed to attain that particular weight?
The two things now we talked about. One is if you are not chewing, the food is just going. You're like a vacuum cleaner. You're just pulling out the food into your stomach. Second, if you are not paying attention, the termination point is either fullness of the stomach or emptiness of the plate. So that makes you eat more than you need before the next meal.
So are these the best ways for one to control his or her weight? So we should be focused on the food we are eating. We should not be distracted by sight, and we should also focus on chewing rather than swallowing.
No, once if you take a small bite, if you chew, you will enjoy it more. Then you can swallow it. There is no problem. It is when you don't chew, because so there are two things: are eating foods that do not require chewing, and second, eating fast. These are the two things. If we can correct, then you won't have a weight problem. Now,
Okay.
what it is supporting the less chewing or lack of chewing is about 60 years ago, we had the green or agricultural revolution. And every government in the world started subsidizing grain farming, wheat, corn, and rice. The grains were never meant for humans. Why do I say that? because we don't have the ability to pick up the grain. Only birds can. You need a beak to pick up the rice. But the agricultural revolution produced so much grain, and the industrial revolution made it easy to mill and make rice flour, wheat flour, corn flour. So we started using grain flour for most of the foods because they were cheaper. Either government was subsidizing the farmer or the fertilizer or the food intake, food stamps and ration cards and things like that. So we started eating more and more grain-based foods which do not require much chewing. When is the last time you had a snack or a meal without a grain flour product?
Almost every time, most of the stuffs you are taking contains these stuffs.
Right. Right. The best example is the Native Americans, we call it American Indians in some folklore. When they were brought to the reservations in the year 1900, they had no type 2 diabetes or cancer. Now, the incidence of these in their community is double that of white Americans living in that area. Why? Think about it. In the native habitat, in the jungle, these Native Americans never ate cultivated grains. They didn't stay in one place. They moved from one food source to another. They ate meat, fish, nuts, eggs, tubers, vegetables, fruits, but they never ate cultivated rice or wheat or corn. In the reservation, that is what they got in plenty. And half of the adults are obese or have type 2 diabetes, and cancer incidence is double.
Okay. Wow. So, still on weight management, when you say that, maybe, for instance, you said everyone has an authentic weight. What do you mean by that? If you say everyone has an authentic weight?
Very good question. Depending on your inheritance, your genetic inheritance, even if you look at Africa, some people are tall, some people are short, some people are heavy. Why did it happen? Because for thousands of years, that is what your genes gave you. Now, when the Asians come to the United States and every child is considered underweight, why? Because the weight table that we learn in medical school is based on white American males and females. It cannot be applied to anybody, any other ethnic group. That is, so each person has a weight determined by their own inheritance. How tall you are, how heavy you are, how thick your bones are, how much muscles you have. There is a genetic inheritance. So the maximum is reached by the age mid-20s, because you have reached the maximum height and your bone density is the maximum. At that time, if you do your blood work and your fasting blood sugar is normal, fasting triglyceride is normal, that is your authentic weight.
I've never heard of this before, that each and every one has an authentic weight. I'm hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, because after age mid-30s, most adults, when they gain weight, what they are gaining is simply fat. You're adding more and more fat into the body. Now, if you are building muscle, that resistance training, that could be, some of that could be muscle. But most adults gain fat. Then we also inherit a fat storage capacity. If the fat storage capacity is full, then nutrients stay in the blood. Okay? Now, bear with me for a minute. Suppose you eat a lot of rice. Within 4 hours, it is digested and absorbed as glucose, because rice is strictly complex carbohydrate.
Yeah, carbohydrate.
And when the blood sugar goes up after eating rice, the pancreas releases insulin. Now, every cell in the body can use glucose to produce energy. But glucose has no way of letting the cell know it is outside. For example, If somebody comes to visit you in your home, how do you know there is somebody outside? How do you know that?
If somebody comes to visit me in my home,
Right. Or where you live.
yes,
They either ring the doorbell or knock on the door. Right? Yeah. Then you know, then you have the option of opening the door. If you don't like that person, forget about it. You won't even open the door. But it is your choice. When the glucose comes to the cell, glucose cannot ring the doorbell. There is no receptor on the cell wall for glucose. The receptor is for insulin. It is insulin that rings the doorbell to tell the cell glucose is outside. Then the cell has to decide whether it needs energy or fuel or not. The cell will send a wagon and then open up the door, load up glucose and bring it in to the factory to produce energy. Okay? Now, if the fat stores are full, if there is, well, after the meal, when all the cells have picked up what it needs, the leftover will come to the liver. And the insulin tells the liver that everybody's happy, this is excess glucose, you have to process it for storage. And the storage is as fat. So the liver will convert the glucose into fat, send it to fat cells. Again, you have inherited certain amount of storage capacity. When that capacity is full, the liver will not convert the glucose into fat. It will stay in the blood as glucose, and your blood sugar start going up. What do you call that person? If your blood sugar level is high, what do you call that person?
is it that it means that you're having diabetes?
You have pre-diabetes and diabetes.
Okay.
So it is all related to what you eat, how much you eat before the next meal. Can you spend it or store it? If you cannot spend it, if you cannot store it, it stays in the blood, your blood sugar level goes up, you are termed as a diabetic person. So what does the endocrinologists say? They say that the cell did not respond to insulin, and they call it insulin resistance. Tell me, what is your favorite meal?
Probably.
Right. Suppose you had a big banquet, big meal. Then I make the most enjoyable rice preparation for you and bring it in. Will you eat it at that time? You are already full. Will you eat it?
It depends. I can eat some and then decide to take the rest home because probably maybe
Right. So if you do that, can I say you are resisting feeding?
Yes, you can say that because I'm full.
That is right. You cannot have it, but next time when you're hungry, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
So this is what is happening to cells when they don't accept more glucose. They are already producing energy from a different fuel, and that fuel is fatty acid. Our muscles are like a hybrid engine. A hybrid engine in a car can run on gasoline or electricity. Muscles can run on glucose or fatty acid. If there is plenty of fatty acid, glucose stays in the blood. The endocrinologists call it insulin resistance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. So
That
is what gives rise to the increase in sugar levels in people, and then we term them as pre-diabetic, diabetes, and then we have type 1, type 2, and the others. So give us more insight into what actually occurs, and then how we can deal with some of these conditions.
Okay. The first thing is start eating foods that require chewing. Forget about blood.
Requires chewing.
Right. So, if I boil some rice, just plain rice, how much will you enjoy just by itself?
If you boil rice.
Yeah, just boiled rice, that's all.
Okay.
Will you enjoy it?
Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy it. I'll enjoy it because it makes it so easy to take it, and then so I'll enjoy it.
You will enjoy the rice alone, meal after meal.
Come again?
Each meal. That's all I'm going to give you. Will you enjoy it?
Yeah, each meal. Yeah.
every meal, nothing else.
Well, we will need others like sauce and these creams and stuff on top of it to enjoy it proper.
Right. So you need more than just rice. But how much can
I chew rice? Well,
very little, because it is such a soft thing. You cannot chew it, so you swallow it. Same with bread or pasta or noodles. So this is what is happening. So that is the number one thing you have to go back. You can eat some. See, about 100 years ago, the percentage of food allergy that a person ate that comes from complex carbohydrates, like rice, was less than 35% of daily total food energy intake. Now, in developed countries, it is 50%, and developing countries, it is 70%. So you are adding so much more food energy from grains. That is why people started gaining weight. The second thing is, when you don't chew, you eat very fast. So if we can control those two things, reduce the amount of grain-based foods to 1/2 of what you are eating, and eat more foods that require chewing, you can control your body weight and prevent type 2 diabetes.
so these are the key ways to control diabetes.
Yes, this is because it is a lifestyle condition. Type 2 diabetes is not a hormonal disease. Do you know how that concept came about?
No, tell us, how did it come about?
About long time ago, about 300 years before Christ, healers in India observed that when certain children urinated, came to that site where the children urinated, and they were curious. Why? So they collected urine from the child and they tasted it, and they found the urine was, then they called it sweet urine. That is the diabetes, but it was type 1 diabetes. Later on, researchers in Canada about 100 years ago found out that these children, the pancreas did not produce insulin. So without insulin, cells don't use glucose, and the glucose accumulated, and it was called type 1 diabetes. The person who treated the maximum number of type 1 diabetics was in Boston, called Elliot Jocelyn. And he injected insulin, and these children recovered and grew up normally. So when his own older sibling came with high blood sugar, he injected her with insulin, and the blood sugar went down. And he thought it's the same disease happening in adults and called it adult onset diabetes. He did not have a test available to measure insulin level in the blood. When that became available, to the surprise of endocrinologists, they found adults at the time of diagnosis of type 2 diabetes had normal levels of insulin. So they had to explain why. And that is how they came up with the concept, the cell is resisting insulin. They had no other test. Even now, there is no test to measure directly the intensity or degree of insulin resistance. It is a concept. It's an explanation. It is not a hormonal disease. So you have to treat it with lifestyle changes, not medication. If you are resistant to an antibiotic, will you treat yourself with the same antibiotic?
No, you need to probably change it. If there's an infection, you can do a sensitivity test to find which antibiotic the bacteria is sensitive to before you
Exactly.
treat yourself with that.
Exactly. But here, endocrinologists are saying you have type 2 diabetes because your body is resisting insulin. But here is your script for insulin injections. How does that happen? So that is my problem.
Yeah, diabetes basically is a lifestyle, let's say lifestyle condition or disease, and it can be remedied when you control the way you intake food and then which kind of food you need to eat. So what kinds of food gives rise to an, let's say, increased blood sugar, and then it gets to a point where the body becomes resistant to insulin, and then the insulin cannot control or regulate the amount of glucose within the body or within the blood.
First of all, we are talking about type 2 diabetes. People with type 1 diabetes, their body, their pancreas do not produce insulin. They need insulin to live. So that's a lifesaver for type 1 diabetics.
Okay, so
In type 2 diabetic,
let's establish something here. So what is the clear difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes? Give us a distinction.
in type 1, in type 1 diabetics, you can measure no insulin in their blood. Their pancreas does not produce insulin. Without insulin, the cells don't know there is glucose outside. They cannot let glucose in and use it. So the blood sugar level goes up because it's an underutilization of glucose in type 1 due to lack of insulin.
In type 1 diabetes, the insulin is not produced.
Correct.
And so therefore, cells do not, have access to the glucose.
Correct. Exactly.
So it means that there is a buildup of the glucose in the blood.
In the blood. Correct. So blood sugar goes up. Right.
That is what we can call, or that's what we call type 1 diabetes.
Correct. In type 2, it has nothing to do with the cell can use it, but it is an oversupply. In type 1, it is underutilization. In type 2, it is oversupply of glucose.
Okay, so in type 2, there is an excess of glucose which is given to the cells.
Correct. That enters through the mouth. So if we control it, the entry point, you can control the blood sugar. If you don't put it in your mouth, how can it be in your blood?
So it means that do we have 2 more than type 1? Is that a case?
Absolutely. You get the most of the type 2 diabetic epidemic started after the agricultural revolution, which produced an abundance of grains. Each grain molecule can have up to 200,000 molecules of glucose. Let me start again. Each complex carbohydrate molecule can be made of up to 200,000 molecules of glucose. So when the complex carbohydrate from grains are digested in the intestine, your blood is getting loaded with glucose.
Interesting. So it means that for the type 1, we do not have control over the type 1 because it's more or less like a hormonal thing and it occurs instant. But for the type 2, we can control it by the very fact of what we take in, the
exact
content of the food we eat.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, the blood sugar cannot go up. It should come into the body first. So wouldn't it be better to prevent the entry rather than try to treat it after it is in the blood?
Yes. But we are aware of, some of us are aware of the food stuff that we eat that can give rise to some of these things. So as per your experiences and per the encounters you've had with diabetic patients, what are some of their key problems that they cannot control and which lead to some of this? Is it what eating habits? Is it to the kinds of food they are eating which they might not be all of it?
The biggest problem is the fast food. Anytime you go, you don't have time to cook, you are busy, you have so many things to do, you grab something, and most of pre-prepared foods are made from grains. Why? Because they can stay their longer shelf life. And the second thing they do is they also add a lot of sodium. And so we are going to, about 15 years after the agricultural revolution, about 60 years ago, we started the obesity epidemic. People started gaining more weight. 10 years later, we have the type 2 diabetic epidemic. Now we have 500 million people around the world with type 2 diabetes. And now, at this time, we are on a cancer epidemic, again promoted by the glucose or carbohydrate meat food. Next, we are going to have the Alzheimer's and the dementia epidemic because Alzheimer's are related to people with diabetes and dementia is related to people consuming more sodium. Sodium is essential for the foods made from carbohydrates to increase their shelf life. So just look at the amount of sodium that you are consuming in pre-prepared packaged foods.
So it means we are more or less killing ourselves slowly.
Exactly. You put it very correctly. That is exactly. Yeah. As you know, we are all going to die, but these people are making it. Can I tell you a story?
They are fastening the process.
Right. Right. A husband and wife. The husband had some cholesterol problem. So the wife always told husband, "Oh, don't eat that. Your cholesterol. Don't eat this. You cannot eat that." And the husband obeyed. Finally, they died. Both died. They went to heaven. Saint Peter is taking them to different areas of the heaven and said, "This is our banquet hall. Look at all the spread. There is steaks, there is hamburgers, there are fish." And so the husband asked Saint Peter, "How can I eat this? I may get a heart attack." He said, "What do you mean? This is heaven. You can eat anything you want. There is no heart attack here." So, he turned around to his wife and said, "See, honey, I could have been here earlier."
We could have been earlier to eat all the food we wanted.
Right. He listened to his wife and didn't eat any of these things.
Yes.
So that is what we are doing. We are trying to hasten our departure from here so we can go there and eat what we want.
One of your previous books that you wrote, and you titled it says, 8 Steps to Reverse Type 2 Diabetes in 8 weeks. What is the number one thing that we can do to reverse diabetes? If in case the people who have diabetes are suffering with diabetes.
Yeah, this is the book, Diabetes, the Real Cause and the Right Cure. The first thing is the question that you started with, what is your authentic weight? So you have to understand what is the weight you had when you were in mid-20s. If your blood sugar and blood cholesterol, triglycerides are normal, that is your weight. How to maintain that every day? You should check your weight and see how much it fluctuates. So if it fluctuated 1 or 2 pounds after a big banquet, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it keeps going up, you can decide, remembering what you ate the previous day, how much you ate, you need to cut that down. So every morning after your bathroom visit, check your weight and keep tab on it. That is the best way you can keep your authentic weight. Then occasionally have the blood test done to make sure your fasting blood sugar, fasting triglyceride are normal.
That's diabetes has a connection to obesity.
Again, if you have, say, let's say 2 people have refrigerators with different storage capacity, one 10 cubic feet, the other 20. If you both buy the same amount of grocery, the 10 will get filled up faster and you cannot put any more. And the grocery stays outside.
Yeah.
So if you inherit a larger fat storage capacity, he can look heavy or she can look heavy, but that is cosmetic obesity. In the United States, 80% of the adults who have type 2 diabetes are obese or overweight. In India, 60% of type 2 diabetics are not obese. Why? Because in India, for generations, people are lean, they are thin. They have very little fat storage capacity because they didn't eat a whole lot more in excess. So if you compare them, they have diabetes because they fill up. Now they can eat more, there are more grains available. Another example is a young woman with no family history of diabetes, no previous history of diabetes. At the week of gestation, when she is pregnant, she's diagnosed with gestational diabetes. Why? Can you any clue why she should be in gestational diabetes?
No, unless you explain to us.
Because when she's pregnant, all of her friends would say, eat this food. This is good for the body, baby's brain. This is good for the baby's skin. This is good for the baby to get taller, faster, smarter. So she eats, she eats, she eats. She fills up her fat storage capacity. The excess glucose stays in the blood. The doctor says, oh, you have pre-diabetes. And after delivery, her blood sugar becomes normal because she loses weight. So how can you have temporary insulin resistance? The doctors have no clue why it happens, and the endocrinologist cannot explain to you why a lean person can become diabetic. Whereas what I'm suggesting is it is the authentic weight. So that can explain type 2 diabetes in lean people and in pregnant women. Or why some people who are grossly obese, but they don't become diabetic because they inherit a larger fat storage capacity. They are cosmetically obese, but not medically obese.
Interesting insight from. So what are some, apart from the 8 ways to reverse diabetes? What are some of the books that you've written, and which areas have you also written on as well?
About 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I asked my doctor, what caused my cancer? He said, oh, check at the American cancer website. They said it is improper diet and lack of exercise. When I went to India, in medical school, when I was in training, they did not have a cancer hospital. Now they have 2 8-story buildings, one for cancer for children, one for adults. So I asked the oncologist, why? There's so much more cancer now. He said, improper diet and lack of exercise. I talked with people in UK, and they said the same thing, improper diet and lack of exercise. From South America, from Africa, how can world over people be having improper diet and lack of exercise and have cancer? I did not understand, and I did not agree with that explanation. So I looked into that, and what I found was, now, do you know can you explain to me what is your understanding of what is cancer?
Cancer is an abnormal growth of maybe a tissue or a cell.
Right. A cell is rapidly multiplying, uncontrollably, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you give an example of a controlled multiplication? In order to understand the uncontrollable multiplication, we need to have an example of controlled multiplication.
That I can think of straight up.
Each one of us come from a single cell called zygote. When the ovum is fertilized with the sperm, it's a zygote, one single cell. Do you know where the fertilization takes place? It does not take place in the womb. It takes place in the fallopian tube as the ovum is rolling down. Okay? So that means the fertilized egg is not connected to the mother. By the time it reaches the womb, do you know how many cells are there in it, in the embryo?
No.
200. 200. So as it is rolling down, it is dividing. How did the cell know how to divide? Who taught the cell? So this is our inheritance from the very first cell on the earth that divided. That mechanism of cell division is incorporated in every stem cell. That's called a stem cell. And these 200 stem cells, each one becomes the mother cell or the stem cell for our organs and systems, because we have 200 different types of cell in an adult human body. So this is the controlled cell division. And each stem cell has the capacity to divide on its own. Every cancer starts from one cancerous stem cell. But in that case, the cell division is uncontrollable. It does not obey any natural laws. However, in order to produce a new cancer cell, it uses the same nutrients as every normal cell. So, if we can prevent cancer cell from multiplying, in order to multiply, it needs nutrients and energy. As I mentioned earlier, our body cells can use either glucose or fatty acids as fuel to produce energy. But cancer cells preferentially use glucose. So if you reduce your intake of glucose, cancer cells cannot multiply. They are there. In my body, right now, there are cancer cells left from after my treatment. But you know what? They live with me. I live in peace with them because I don't feed them. I don't feed them. That's why I cut down the complex carbohydrate energy intake. And this is why I wrote the book, Surviving Cancer. You are actually coexisting with cancer cells. I'm happy with them. They are happy with me. Nope.
Yeah.
So that is what the next thing I did. When I give a talk to the cancer, most of the time the cancer stem cell is formed after mutation of the genes that control the cell growth. This is why the average age of an adult with cancer is age 60, because it's accumulating mutations. Then one time when I was giving a talk, somebody asked me, the average age of a child with cancer is 6. How can the child develop cancer? Because the child has not been exposed to enough mutations. So I started thinking about it, and after a couple of years, I came up with the next book, When Your Child Has Cancer. So that shows, that explains how a child who has not lived long enough to accumulate mutations develop cancer. And another time, I was giving a talk about diabetes, and the people will ask me, but what can we eat? Because everybody is so used to grain-based foods.
Yes, yes.
So I thought about it, and I came up with the next book, Diabetes Free Cookbook and Exercise Guide. So there are recipes for people with diabetes to control their blood sugar and again eat healthy.
Wow.
Does that give you a picture of what I'm doing?
Yes, yes. So you lay down everything you are talking about or preaching about. You've putting them in books for people to have copies to read them. So you think that as you explain cancer and you give rise to mutation, multiplication, and all these stuff about cancer, what are the lifestyle behaviors that contribute to people developing cancer?
Excess intake of grain-based foods, because you are feeding the cancer cell.
The same as diabetes.
Exactly. That is why it is called, I call it also a lifestyle condition. Remember, I talked to you about the Native Americans who were brought to the reservation.
Yeah.
They did not have any cancer. So the Royal College sent a team of expert physicians to find out why they don't have cancer. They could not find a reason. At that time, they said Native Americans or American Red Indians are immune to cancer, but they could not explain why. Now, their cancer incidence is double that of white Americans. Why? They are being fed grain-based foods left and right. They can get it free.
Okay. So in that book that you published about that free cookbook, you were talking about 80 utterly delicious recipes and
Yeah,
probably 12 exercises to keep our blood sugar low.
right.
Right. So what are some of the recipes that we can take or how to keep our blood sugar low and to stay away from cancer or to be cancer free? And the exercises as well.
Because there are 2 points here. One is reduce the intake of foods made from grains and grain flour. The second is almost everything requires chewing. So that slows down the amount. And then there are questions and answers, frequently asked questions like weight loss medication, insulin. Even if you keep in mind, even if you keep your A1C below 7 using insulin, the diabetologists don't guarantee that you can avoid complications of diabetes. They won't say anything about that. All they say is we can bring the sugar down.
Yes.
If you have pneumonia and if I keep your fever down with aspirin, are you getting better?
Or still, the pneumonia will still be there.
Right. That is the problem. The endocrinologists concentrate on the symptom, not the illness.
You are focused so much on diabetes, cancer, weight management, and then diet, nutrition, the kinds of food we should eat, the exercise we should do, because these are lifestyle issues that we
Exactly.
we can when we put up a proper lifestyle, we can get rid of them. And so you're
Right.
advocating that.
All you have to look at your ancestors 100 years ago. They had a healthy life. They were physically active. They didn't have as much to eat, but they were good, fine. So, in order to be healthy, you have to take charge of your own body and you decide what you should eat, how much, and how often. Stay away from grains. Eat as much food as, foods that require chewing. Concentrate on enjoying the food, not filling up your stomach. Each bite. There are not many activities that you can do every day, multiple times a day, and still get the full enjoyment. Nature provided us with eating to do that, but we are not making use of what we can. As I said earlier, we all enjoy eating, but we are not enjoying what we eat.
That statement is very profound and interesting. It says we all enjoy eating the process, but we are not enjoying what we eat.
And my books are available. You can go to drjohnonhealth.com. That is my website. And books are available on Amazon.
Yes. So
Again, Dr. John on Health.
Dr. John on Health.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That is my website.
we can find you on Facebook. We can find you on LinkedIn. Where can we locate you? Where can we find you?
On Facebook, and I'm doing some
Okay.
shows also. Yeah.
This so
But all the can
on Health.
that Dr. John on Health. That will take you to my website and you can look at all. There are animation videos about diabetes and cancer and weight gain.
So it appears that all of the things you've said, weight gain, cancer, diabetes, are like linked.
Yes, exactly.
And then, yes, they are linked. And then it's just like a common cause giving rise to all these three stuff.
Exactly.
And that is the aspect of us eating much of grain food.
Yes.
And so if we stay away from these kinds of food or food which
Right.
have these kind of ingredients in, it means that we are staying away from diabetes, we are staying away from cancer, we'll be able to control our diets.
Exactly. It is within our control. All you have to do is give your hands a rest. No, keep it away from your mouth. You're fine.
It's been very educative session, and then I think that people who get hold of this episode will really want to know more about, because most of the times when we hear of these diseases, we think that it's something we've tried to explain ourselves to people, explain the scientific occurrence behind all these kind of conditions. But then again, you realize that it's still on the rise. The incidences are still going up each and every time. But today, if I haven't heard of anything from you as a host of this podcast, I've heard that we should stay away from grain foods. And again, because it's connected, and the kind of lifestyle that we are living, we can live a lifestyle that will prevent all these conditions from anybody who gets hold of the audio, of the video. We appreciate the fact that, yes, diabetes, weight management or weight gain, and then cancer are all lifestyle issues that can be avoided by simply just avoiding eating food that contain grain, and then also enjoying the food that we eat, not just enjoying the eating, but enjoying the food and then also enjoying the process of eating as well. And we are good to go.
Exactly. You can have a healthy, happy life and Don't bother your family with financial problems and having to take care of you when your kidneys are damaged, when you have to amputate your legs, your heart attack, your Alzheimer's. All this can be prevented easily rather than treated.
All right. Thank you, Dr. John, for coming on board. As I've said earlier, thank you very much. I am very grateful for honoring this invitation and for joining the King Obed Podcast. Yeah, viewers, listeners, thank you very much for joining and getting hold of this episode. I know you enjoy it. We are on all the platforms. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. The King Obed Podcast. Search for us. And then also search for Dr. John on health. Go to the website and connect to Dr. John and find out the interesting books that he's written on lifestyle management, on diabetes, on cancer, and all that you need to stay healthy as an individual. So until we meet again in the next episode, yes, have a good time. And it has always been the King Obed Podcast, the destination for personal growth, development, inspiration, and motivation, where we make sure that you get the best of life for yourself. So see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.